Classic rock. Classic rock. Classic rock.
Well, man, I want to thank you for doing this because we're going to get to spend 20 minutes or so talking about, I mean, this is a dream for me to sit there with one of the guys in the band and talk about British Steel. It's hard to believe it's 30 years ago, number one, but this is probably the Priest album that crossed over and led to mass American and worldwide success. What's it like for you 30 years later to sit down and revisit this?
Yeah, well, it's fantastic, really. I mean, I think I can speak for everybody in the band. I mean, no one ever thought that we'd get this far, really. And but as you say, looking back, it just seems like yesterday, literally. I know, to coin an old phrase, that we were in the studio knocking out the riffs for British Steel.
Now, speaking of that, that's one of the cool stories about this. Is the studio you guys were in, was this a home that was owned by John Lennon at one time?
That's exactly right. I mean, obviously, avid fans of John Lennon and the Beatles will probably remember quite well. I think it was kind of the White period that he went through with Yoko. I mean, and the actual inside of the house, all the outside was painted white, which was quite traditional in England, but everything... he painted everything inside white, and John Lennon installed a studio, and there is some footage of John Lennon and I think it's Phil Spector working, in the studio. In actual fact, the movie Imagine, there's quite a lot of the home and the studio and the grounds in that movie called Imagine.
Now, were you guys, I mean, you're British, so were you big Beatles fans? Was this a thrill for you?
No, I mean, honestly, I can't say. I mean, I was kind of into, like, the more bluesy, like, early Stones and bands called The Pretty Things and Them and anything that was a bit moody, Barry Maguire, whatever. But, so, I mean, I wasn't the biggest Beatles fan, but obviously, as you grow older, you think, undeniably, obviously one of the greatest, music bands that ever lived.
Hey, KK, one thing correct me if I'm wrong, but British Steel was probably, I'm guessing it was the 6th or 7th in the Priest catalog. I think it matters if you include the live one. What's cool is this day and age, I don't think a band would have had that many chances. Do you ever look back and think, man, we're lucky that we were able to be doing this in a time where they let you develop as a band and let you grow?
Yes, I mean, it was unlike nowadays. Obviously, we were lucky in a sense that all the machinery and the vehicles were there, for the right artists, management, agencies, record companies, and as you say, as long as the band and what the band was doing was pretty good and valid, then a record company was a pretty good ally in those days, I must say. We were lucky to be around at the right time. One
thing, now, did you guys, I got to just put you on the spot, British Steel, it isn't a pop album, but it was more commercial, and some of the songs like Breaking the Law, are a little bit more mainstream than maybe something like Victim of Changes from Sad Wings. Was it a conscious writing effort, or was this just a progression of... I think you guys called it Killing Machine, and we called it...
yeah.
We called it Hellbent for Leather.
No, it's really weird. I mean, I think it's fair to say that Priest, as we've gone through, as we've travelled through time, we've gone through various changes and mood changes, and life is a little bit like that. One decade is different to the previous one or the next one.
Now, I've always wondered this, man, as an American Judas Priest fan, the name British Steel, because I'm gonna say this as an American, this has a British metal flavor to it, especially you look at songs like United, Metal Gods with that kind of pulsating chord that just blasts out at the beginning. It doesn't sound like the American hard rock at the time. Did that play into the title, or was British Steel just something that sounded cool?
Well, I think it was a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other, really, Jeb. I think that I think I'm right in saying that we actually decided on the title, because obviously being a band, you concentrate on the songwriting, the performance, the recording, all that sort of stuff, and then suddenly the management's going, well, you need to come up with a title for this album and some artwork and all of that, and that all kind of comes together kind of at the end, and I think that that's the right way to do it, because you don't know what the flavour of the music is or the vibe or anything like that. You can't really put a picture to the music first. I think you've got to come up with the songs, and then you decide on what fits, what jacket fits.
Now, did the band have any play into the razor blade, and it looks like it's cutting into the fingers if you really look at it? Was that the record company, or was that, did you guys have some input?
No, to be honest, I think it was the art director for Sony who actually did our previous couple of album covers, who seems now to turn out to do quite a bit of a genius, I think, really. His name was Roslab. He was a very, very good art director, and he's very much in tune with the band. And I think I'm right in saying that he came up with that idea. Now, I don't know whether his inspiration or some of his inspiration may have come from the Rock-a-Roller album cover by John Pash that won many awards, because Rock-a-Roller, Coca-Cola had, there was a connection there. And the same with the razor blade, the writing and everything. I think it was the razor blade, the popular English razor blade at the time, I think it was called Wilkinson's Sword. But anyway, whether he drew anything from that, I don't know. But certainly the fingers, I think, was his idea. But it was, dare I say, it was cutting edge.
It was cutting edge, man. Well, we've kind of covered a little bit about the studio. Now, I'd like to just jump in and talk about the songs, if that's okay.
Fine.
Now, before we just talk about specific tracks, I was lucky enough to see the 30th anniversary tour when you played at the Moondance Jam in Minnesota. You played the whole album, start to finish. As a guitarist,
I remember the gig. It was a great gig.
That was I love that gig up there. I go up there every year. As an artist and a guitar player, you got to revisit some songs that you hadn't played, maybe for 30 years. Was there any surprises you found that you're like, man, this is really a great song that from British Steel that you may have overlooked?
Usually, bands get into a bit of a comfort zone where most of the stuff that you play, you know that lots of people are going to be very familiar with it and love it, But obviously, to play an album in its entirety, dare I say, you would perceive that there was an element of risk.
The song that blew me away live that I didn't expect to blow me away live was Steeler. That is that's the song, you stuck it on the end of the album. It's you listen to it over the years, it kind of gets forgotten a bit, but when you pulled that out, I was like, son of a bitch, man, this is as strong as anything else.
Yeah, well, I know a lot, funnily enough, I know we've met a lot of younger artists over the years, and so many of them actually cite that song as being their great one, if not their greatest inspiration, to inspire them to actually play themselves. Although, like you say, to most people, it's probably not the one you would think. But some songs do work great live, and definitely it was fabulous to play that song.
Now, back when you were recording Metal Gods, it was different than it is today. If you want some sounds or you want some, effects, it's a push of a button away. Now, I know the story, and I know you've told it before, but I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and tell it again. There's the sounds where the Metal God at the end, it sounds like the big creatures, walking towards you. How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it was in those days, Jeb, when bands literally had to make our own sound effects, because we didn't have vast libraries of CDs that we could draw on, like nowadays. And we wanted that big, heavy, marching sound. And close mic in Ringo's big drawer of cutlery worked wonders. I don't know what else we tried to get that particular sound, but I know when we mic'd up the cutlery drawer and was giving it, obviously shaking it in time, it did the job exceptionally well. That was nothing compared to like the breaking glass on Breaking the Law, where we actually were smashing milk bottles on Ringo's patio, but that's another story. But we did the clean-up job pretty good.
If he wondered where his milk was, there was an answer. You know, speaking of Breaking the Law, that's one of the classic riffs, KK, of all-time metal. Did you or Glenn come up with that? Did you come up with it together? How'd that work?
I'm not exactly sure, but I'm more than happy to credit that riff with Glenn, since it was far too long. I think it was before electricity when that riff, I first heard that riff, but, yeah, what a great riff that is.